Oh, we're good, okay. Today is December 12th. It's about 6:18 p.m., and this is a meeting of the Law and Ordinance Committee. And to my right is Councilman Todd Siebert. I am Bob Phillips, the Chair Pro Tem, in the absence of Councilwoman Snee. And we're here to talk about a Trex liquor license application from Fuel 7. And Mr. Titterington.
Thank you. I think you're familiar. With the Trex application process. That the owner or his representative talks to liquor control, sees if there's any surplus permits elsewhere in the state, and they're allowed to transfer with permission of the council into Troy, as long as they create at least one job. This is the application from the new location that's under construction across from the hardware store. I'm going to say Ordings, but it's the new name. Thank you. And it's similar. Well, they just did. The same owner is building on North Market Street. Also brought a Trex application to the council very recently. They are planning on adding jobs. They're asking for a C2 permit. We have none available, which is why they went for a Trex application. We are not requesting emergency legislation, but just to remind the committee that there is no legislation on next week's agenda. It would be read as a committee report, and then a motion second and a roll call accepting the report.
Okay. I don't have any questions on this item. Do you?
No.
Go for it. Any other council folks in the audience have any questions? In the general audience have any questions? Seeing none, what is your pleasure with this item?
Move forward, please.
It is unanimous with the committee present that we move forward as staff is recommending. Are we rolling over the speed limits? Okay. Then we are here to also talk about a review of some speed limits. Peters Road, Archer Drive, Swales, Riverside Drive, etc. And Mr. Titterington.
So residents along those two sections of those roads, Peters Road between Archer Drive and Swales, Riverside Drive between Adams and the north part of Duke Park, had reached out to us several months ago, as well as the Miami County engineers, requesting that we look at stabilizing the speed limits. Those two sections of roads go in and out of the city, are part of the county jurisdiction and the city jurisdiction in different sections. And as a result, there are different sections of the ORC that apply within corporate limits and outside of corporate limits, resulting in variable speed limits, which makes it confusing for either the sheriff or the PD to enforce any violations. So several months ago, we reached out, had a consultant come through and do a speed study. The next step is to submit those to ODOT to review those studies and validate the studies and agree with the recommendations of the studies, specifically that Peters Road between Archer Drive and Swales be set at 40 miles an hour, and Riverside Drive between Adams and north of Duke be at 35 miles an hour.
Did they happen to? We didn't study Adams Street at all, Hobart Arena, and up through the high school or anything like that.
No.
Boy, that one sure needs to be adjusted up also. I don't have any particular questions on this item.
Did somebody text you or something?
No.
Are you channeling a certain someone who's
No.
in Chicago right now?
No.
No, I don't.
No, these were very specific studies, because we did have somebody from the outside do it for us, traffic engineering.
I have
Yeah. All right. Any other council folks? Mr. Schilling, please.
A couple of questions on did the study say anything about the use of golf carts on Peters, crossing Peters Road from the subdivisions into the golf course. I know that's not, they're not street legal golf carts, and they're a violation of the city code.
Where are they crossing?
They're crossing the new subdivision out there by Robinson's house. They
Across from the country club?
Pardon?
So between the country club and the subdivision?
Yes.
And, Jill, what is that speed limit? Is that 35?
Right now it's 35.
Okay, so it is legal for them to cross?
They're not street legal golf carts.
Well, okay, that
Then they're
would be
not-
something for the PD to look at, but the traffic engineering study would not take that into account.
Okay. And the other one, can we add streets to this thing, or do we have to have the study?
No, the study's already done. The
Okay.
study had to be a specific area because they had to do traffic counts and do an analysis and some statistics.
Okay, because I would like to sometime look at Washington Road from the school all the way down to West Main Street.
I think we've done that in the past, but,
There's no speed limit signs out on that road, that's why I question it.
Between 718 and 41, majority is out.
it's outside the county, that's what I was
So it'd
thinking.
be-
Well, I mean, it's the same thing, I mean, this one we're talking about is outside this, some of it's in and out. I
It
mean.
goes in and out and in and out and in and out, depending on the section.
And we're going to have the same situation because we've got the subdivisions now, and the city owns part of that street.
So that's a great point, but these are for these two.
Okay, well, I'll just bring it up and let you ponder it, I guess.
Very good.
Any other comments or questions from anyone in the general audience? Seeing none,
Move forward.
and there is no emergency on this item, is that correct?
There is not.
Then unanimous with the committee that's present to proceed as staff is recommending on this. Do we have one more item? We're going to establishing an ordinance regarding tree trimming and noxious overgrowth
Okay.
on private property.
So we have, by way of background, an ordinance that addresses property maintenance for tall grass and weeds that is different from how we can handle tree trimming and noxious overgrowth because of the way the code is written. So when it comes to tall grass and weeds, we send the notice, we try to work with the property owner, we give them the time, and then if they don't comply, we will go out and address the issue, and then we can assess it to their taxes. We cannot do that with with tree trimming and noxious growth, especially, for example, when it's overgrown over alleyways, over sidewalks, etc. The only recourse that we have is to cite them into court and then wait several months for the judge to adjudicate it, and then hopefully the property owner will follow through. Sometimes they don't follow through. We then have to refile. And so the development department worked with the law director to provide some language and a recommendation that we change the tree trimming and noxious overgrowth to be consistent with the grass and weeds process. And we are not asking for emergency legislation.
Just a thought. We had several years ago a vacation of an alleyway in the Southview area, and we had some discussion, and Mr. Kerber, I don't remember if you would recall this, with some trees that were in the alleyway that before we vacated it, and then the overgrowth into private property. Are we responsible in that sort of circumstance? Are we responsible for the overgrowth of these large trees in alleyways that we may have at this point? I don't know how germane that is to this particular issue.
That could depend upon how the alley is platted out. whether in the location of the tree, and sometimes they are right-of-ways, sometimes they are dedicated as streets to the city. So that's sort of
Tough.
that's a tough one to answer, just in generally speaking in that regard, because different streets and roadways, the public has a right to traverse across them. There's different sources to that. So the answer to any sort of maintenance could depend upon whether it's a right-of-way or a dedicated street. And, of course, the location of the offending vegetation would also be a factor in that.
Okay. Thank you.
So this would help address that as well, If the tree is actually located on the private property behind the alley, then it's the property owner's responsibility. We have the right to go in and trim it back
To the property
if we
line.
wanted to, but if we were going to hold the property owner responsible, this cleans up that process for us.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Any other council folks have questions? Anybody in the general audience have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, what is your pleasure with this?
Move forward.
All right, we'll be moving unanimous with the committee that is present to go ahead and move forward as requested by council and has no emergency. Okay. Any other items to become before the Law and Ordinance Committee?
No, sir.
Then we are done. Thank you all for attending.